Welcome. Today we are going to be taking apart an Asus G752V gaming laptop. So we're going to be using a small Phillips head bit. This is a 2.5. And first thing we're going to do is open that metal or the rubber cover, remove the screw, and then just pull up and then it'll pop that cover off. It looks like hard drive caddy is just laying loose on this particular laptop, but it's just a few screws to remove that caddy. Alright, and now we're going to remove all of the screws that are in the bottom case here. First, going to have to remove these little rubber plugs that are shaped as a hex key wrench, and then there's a Phillips screw underneath. So we'll go ahead and remove those. Alright, once you have those bottom case screws removed, we're going to go ahead and pull that optical drive out and then get the 3 screws that were hiding underneath it. Alright, so now we're going to work our way around the seam between the bottom case and the palm rest assembly. And just get a little flat edge in there. And then you can start popping the bottom case off of the palm rest. This particular laptop, there's one screw that's just not coming out, so it might be broken underneath. Sometimes it can make it interesting trying to remove. Alright, once we've worked that palm rest free all the way around, we can go ahead and pull it forward. And inside there's just going to be a couple ribbons that need to be disconnected. So just flip up the small retainer and pull the ribbon out. And then repeat for the other one. It's really hard to see, but it's almost the exact same, and it's easy to see because it's hanging off the bottom of the palm rest. And we have a couple more on the right side. So same deal, we're going to flip up and remove that ribbon. And remove the palm rest and access the inside. Alright, now that we have the palm rest off, it's a good time now to go ahead and just pull this back cover bar, since it's going to be need to be removed anyways. And then it's just got a simple pull-out type connector. Alright, so we have a good view of the inside of the laptop, and now we can go ahead and remove the memory stick. Just go ahead and spread those bars, it'll pop up, and then just pull it out. And we can go ahead and remove all the little accessory bits. We got the Wi-Fi card, SD card reader, and then the fans power button. Pretty much all need to come out before we can remove the motherboard. So go ahead and just flip up on that connector, and just as we go along we'll pull the little connectors out of the motherboard. But for now we can go ahead and just remove the small accessory boards in the bottom case. Alright, looks like there's a little bit of tape, so go ahead and remove that. So for the Wi-Fi card, it's just one screw, and for the antennas, you're just going to lift straight up on them to pop them out. Then you'll just be able to slide the card out of the connector. Alright, so for that USB type board, the connector just comes straight, slides straight out. Just grab the little tabs with your fingernails to remove that. Looks like just a couple of screws and a connector for the fan, so we can go ahead and remove that as well, since it's partially covering that USB board. And once you have that connector pulled out, and remove the fan. And just to illustrate why it's good to use cans of air to clean out your fan and heat sink, this fan looks pretty plugged with fuzz and dust, so it's not really cooling the motherboard very well. And on this particular laptop, the motherboard is bad, so that's probably the main reason, is overheating, because once those fans get dirty and the heatsink is clogged, there's no way to move air through and no way to cool your processor. Alright, we'll go on the other side and remove this fan as well. And if you just lift straight up on that power button board, it'll pull free the little connectors and you can remove it. Alright, so go ahead and free that fan connector. And we'll get rid of the tape that's kind of covering everything here. Alright, so it looks like we have the fan pretty well freed up, so we can finish removing these screws and remove that fan. This one's pretty well plugged up as well. Alright, we'll go ahead and free the rest of the display assembly connectors for the video cable. It looks like the Wi-Fi antennas are already pulled out. So now we're going to go ahead and just finish removing the USB board. And then after that we can separate the motherboard from the case. Alright, so we'll just go along and remove the connectors that are still attached to the motherboard. Let's check underneath. Looks like we've got all the screws. Alright, now we're going to finish removing the screws that are attaching the motherboard to the case. Alright, looks like we've got the screws. It's always good to just give it a little wiggle and make sure that you don't feel anything else holding the motherboard in. Looks like we're almost there, but maybe this heatsink here is passing all the way through, so we'll just go ahead and remove this. Give it another little wiggle. It looks like it might be easier to remove the display assembly ahead of time. It feels like there may be something else holding down the heat sinks on the motherboard, so we'll just go ahead and finish removing the little connectors and such that go to the display. And also the tape. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and remove these hinge screws and see if we can separate the display to give us a better view of the motherboard. So it looks like the two screws on the outside need to come off as well to separate the display assembly. And on this particular one, since it's broken, there is a screw cap right here that is holding it in because it's broken. So I'm going to go ahead and free that, and then we'll come back to disassembling it. Alright, so we got that broken screw off. Now we're going to separate the display assembly from the rest of the laptop. Alright, so we already removed the back screws for this little cover. Looks like we're going to need to remove the other screws. So once you have the screws out, you can finish removing the rest of the battery. Alright, so we uncovered a couple more screws that need to be removed to remove that motherboard. And we'll just do one last check and make sure that it's nice and loose. And for the motherboard, you don't want to pull from this side at all. You want to pull from this side because there are ports that are poking through the bottom case. So whenever you're removing a motherboard, you want to do it from the side that does not have the majority of the ports. I'll just kind of wiggle it and move it laterally out of the ports on the bottom case, and then you can remove the motherboard. So that's about it for the bottom case. Looks like there's just a few screws for that subwoofer, and then that's pretty much the last component to uninstall from the bottom case. Alright, back to the motherboard. The DC jack will just come off. So you're just going to lift straight up while not bending the piece of motherboard underneath, and that will allow you to remove the DC jack. And then for the heatsink, it looks like we have 8 screws. So we're going to go ahead and remove the heatsink. And it does not matter which order you remove the screws, but if you are reinstalling with thermal paste, you want to tighten these down in the order that is shown by the stamped numbers. So just to make sure that the heatsink is tightened down evenly, but as far as removal, it doesn't matter the order. And we'll just go ahead and gently pry and kind of wiggle to get that heatsink separated from the processor. Sometimes that thermal paste can act like a pretty heavy glue, but in this case it was pretty easy. And that's how you remove the heatsink. Alright, now for the display assembly. Like most other laptops, you're going to access the inside of the display by removing the front bezel. So we will go along and just pop that bezel off the LCD assembly. Alright, so we got the top off there, and you can see inside the display assembly that there's just a few screws. There's going to be 2 screws on the top and 2 screws on the bottom of the LCD to remove it. And the hinges and rails, same Phillips bit, just a screwdriver to remove that. Let's see, I can probably just get this whole bezel off to show you. There are some screws on the bottom if you want to remove the entire bezel. So you're going to remove those 2 screw caps and then remove the screws underneath. But as this display assembly is going to stay complete, we're just going to go ahead and skip that step. But once you get the bezel off, you'll be able to see inside real easily, and it's just a couple of screws to take off the hinges or the LCD display, and then the Wi-Fi antennas and webcam are just held in by adhesive. So that's all you really need to know to disassemble the LCD display. It's actually quite easy in comparison to the rest of the laptop. So just go ahead and pop that bezel back in. And of course you can see that reinstallation will be just as easy as well. There's only a couple screws at the bottom to actually remove, and the rest of the assembly will just kind of pop off. So that is it. That is how you disassemble an Asus G752V gaming laptop. If this video helped you or you found it informative, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.